First, let me say thank you to Food Network for letting me submit a tape for Cake Challenge. I think this is a great opportunity and I'm eager to show you what I can do. Hi, my name is Mark Lee. I'm 40 years old and I'm a graphic designer. I got into pastry design probably about 3 years ago. We were with some friends and the question was asked, if we weren't doing our current job, what we'd like to be doing. And I said I liked watching all the cake competition shows and the Ace of Cakes on TV. And for my birthday that year, my wife actually got me a Wilton cake decorating class at the local hobby store. First I was kind of like, are you serious? Is this something you want me to do? And I actually went though. It fit in perfect with my background. It was a creative outlet. And since then, I've probably taken about 3 other Wilton classes. And currently, I probably just learned through the internet and YouTube videos. And I am getting more involved with the ICES organization. What I love about decorating is the ability to create something from nothing. To take a two-dimensional sketch and create that into a 3D design is, a fulfilling feeling for me. And I also love the client's reaction of, wow, that's a cake. That's what I strive for, and that's the reason why I do cake decorating. Some of my strengths are probably the ability to take that 2D concept and execute that into a final 3D design. I do feel I am fairly competitive. Before I do any cake theme, I actually go online and see what other people have done in that same theme. And I try to think of ways of, okay, what can I do to outdo them on that cake and what can I do to make it my own? Some of my adventurous or passions I do have is actually motorcycling, like collecting Legos, and snowboarding. I started snowboarding when I was about 16 and I started motorcycling in the year 2000. It seems like there's always room for improvement, to learn a new trick or learn a new maneuver. It kind of relates the same thing into the cake decorating world because, you can learn a new technique. I am starting to learn, more about modeling chocolate and about isomalt. So there's tons of new techniques I think that are out there and that can be applied into the cake decorating. Probably my most ambitious cake I did was probably the Wrigley Field cake, just because there's a lot of detail into that. I'm a details guy, and I try to make it as accurate as I can be. And to me, that's the challenge I think of trying to do the best I can and try to cram as much as I can into try to make it the most realistic. I don't think there's any kind of refusal of a cake that I would do. I was asked to do an erotic cake for a bachelorette party. At first I was a little leery and felt weird about decorating it, but I got over it and on to the next cake. My worst client story would probably be a phone call I received from a client who actually, in the first 5 minutes of that conversation, she told me more about her personal life than about anything about the cake order. I suppose if you could add on cake decorator / psychologist, maybe I have a niche market I could cover or something, but it was an interesting conversation nonetheless. I think I would be good for the Food Network Cake Challenge, maybe because I represent the next progression of cake decorator, of a more personalized sculpted style versus your traditional stacked wedding style cake. And I think there's a lot of new techniques with gum paste, the isomalt, modeling chocolate, and gelatin, that I would love to showcase and put on the Cake Challenge.